Welcome, everybody, to episode number 2 of the Scholastic Sit Down podcast for the 2025-26 season. My name is Dylan Ward. That's Luke Jordan. We're both sitting down and ready to talk about the Scholastic Hockey League. And Luke, we don't have preseason reviews to get to this week. We have actual regular season Scholastic Hockey League play, 4 games over the weekend, and we're going to talk about each one of them.
Yeah, super excited to actually recap games that have actually happened in SHL play. Not only that, but I actually got to attend that Saturday night affair between Stevenson and St. Viator. I was there, got to watch the first 2 periods, saw a lot of fun offensive opportunities, and I'll definitely break down more of it as we make our way along the tracks here, Dylan.
Well, we got that. We're gonna take a look at outside the SHL here in the early goings of the season. We're gonna talk with SHL President and the head coach of the York Dukes, Evan Pulakidas, as our very first guest of this season's episode lineup. Then we've got next week's preview, or I guess this week's preview, and then finally question of the week in trivia. So, Luke, why don't we jump right in to the review? SHL opening night was on Friday, September 12th. The York Dukes were at home, and again, we'll hear from York's head coach later on in this episode. But Luke, they were dominant against the Stevenson Patriots. The score only 3-1, but the shots on goal 37-14 as they ended up winning, the first SHL team to record a win in the standings.
Yeah, and look who 2 of their 3 goal scorers were. Some clear names to remember from last year with Passion and Papadopoulos. His team's returning a lot of talent, and you can tell early on. And yeah, that is a drastic difference in shots on goal. You're talking about 20, what is that? 23? My
Yeah,
gosh.
checks out.
And Oscar Fish as well, who was the backup last year for the York Dukes. He got listed as the 3rd star of this game. It's a new thing that they're doing on the game sheet, 3 stars of the game, and I'll read them off real quick. Oscar Fish got the 3rd star, Jack Passion the second, Andrew Papadopoulos the first. But for Fish, he didn't get to play in many big moments last year. He was just kind of just a stand back guy until he was needed in the state quarterfinals, and he didn't look bad then. Clearly, in this first game, he didn't look bad at all now.
All right, well, that was on Friday night. The following night, Luke, you were hinting at the fact that you were at this one. It was the St. Viator Lions at home against the Stevenson Patriots. So the Patriots, after losing in the SHL opener, had chance at redemption. But at the end of this one, St. Viator won by a wide margin, 5-0, the final score. So just 2 games into the SHL season, our first running clock. St. Viator outshooting Stevenson 34-17. 2 goals in the first, 2 goals in the second, and 1 in the third. Ryan Loftus and Albert Przwara had 2 goals apiece in this dominant victory. And I'll point out, Luke, that St. Viator, they weren't in the preseason invitational. They weren't in any kind of competition preseason. So as a group, this was their very first game against an opponent of the year.
Yeah, and to be frank with you, I saw it early. This team was working through some growing pains in that first period. I think both sides kind of were just struggling on the offensive side of things. There was a couple shots, but not a lot of great, tic-tac-toe type plays, especially through the neutral zone. But then as soon as that second period came around, I mean, you got to watch back some of those Viator goals they had. They were just pure snipes. They found open men in the slot, and some of those guys, when it comes off their stick, it is in the back of the net in a flash. Ryan Loftus, well, I think he was almost nearly off balance, if I remember correctly, when he scored either the second or third goal, but he just turned, fired it. It's a quick release. It's so tough to see, and it also hits the top corner as well. So, I mean, that first line, another thing that Stevenson didn't do too well was discipline. They gave too many power play opportunities, and you could kind of, I know Asher Ali somewhat personally. He refs some of the USPHL games I announced, and I could tell he was kind of frustrated when his team went to the penalty box because you don't want to face that first line of the power play. You look out there, you got Sibig, Loftus, Prizwara all going out there, and you're kind of like, all right, well, I hope we block some shots so I don't have to face them all. So yeah, no, overall for St. Viator, it was a really good team showing, and they're only going to get better. But I'm a little bit shocked by Sunday, so we'll get to that when we get to that.
Yes, we will. And moving along to Sunday, we had our first multiple game day of the SHL season. Let's start out by talking about this one, Luke. New Trier at home against St. Ignatius. It was both teams' SHL regular season opener, and the Trevians, who won that preseason invitational, picked up right where they left off. A 3-1 victory. The shots were close, 29 to 27 in favor of New Trier Green, but they were able to get three of those past the goaltender. Maxwell Reed, the netminder for New Trier, got 26 saves in this one. And the Trevians, I mean, again, they were pretty much always a favorite to win the state championship coming into the season, and they begin SHL play 1-0.
Yeah, credit to St. Ignatius on a good fight, but I mean, you look at the three stars of the game, Knight, Reed, and Lohmeyer, three names we didn't call on New Trier Green last year, and it just goes to show you how deep this program really is and what seems to be a usually close battle between these two teams. St. Ignatius, now, granted, we didn't get to watch them play, but that's a pretty impressive first showing for a team that is fairly new. You got a lot of your seniors who had left, including your starting netminder who was really anchoring your team, Brody Netsky, alongside Austin Haynes, Jackson Steinloff. We talked about it last episode. To only lose by two to New Trier in your first game, who a team who has just looked gelled ever since the start of the preseason invitational, that's not a bad start at all. And I would not count out the Wolfpack in anything.
All right, well, that takes us to our final game of the weekend. It was the Lake Forest Scouts kicking off their schedule at home against the St. Viator Lions, who had just won 5-0 the very night before. Well, how about the Scouts? Being outshot 33 to 17, end up winning this one by a final score of 4-3. Thomas Esplin, a goal and two assists. Michael Catalano, a goal and two assists. And Logan Marsh between the pipes, 30 saves on 33 shots. And Luke, after such a dominant performance by St. Viator just the night before, and now they come in to play a team that, was right in that playoff picture at the end. What does this say about the Scouts this season?
Well, they're gonna rely on their goalie a lot. I mean, 33 shots allowed to arguably one of the top teams in the state. That's not bad at all. But Logan Marsh, who's a returner, he's faced some of these guys' shots before, stands tall, plays an awesome game, kind of snubbed of the three stars of the game, if you ask me. But also, how about Lake Forest with two guys with 3 points? Michael Catalano, who I remember from last year, Thomas Esplin as well. This team, that is one heck of a start. You do got to watch out on the shots, though, because you are not going to have 3 goals on 17 shots every game. But regardless, I mean, tip of the cap if I had one on to the Scouts. I mean, that is incredible work to start your season.
So there you go. Those are your first four games of the SHL season. And again, this is an extremely small sample size. But Luke, the home teams are 4-0 through the first four games.
Yeah, that's one heck of a start for the home side.
And with that, we'll turn it over to my partner Luke here as he'll take us through some of the other action in the state of Illinois, but outside of the SHL. So, Luke, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dylan. And if you are new to this podcast, it is just a reflection on the three other main boys hockey leagues in the state of Illinois. Alongside, we'll be adding the Metro Girls Hockey League this year when it starts to fire up more. For now, we're going to focus on the IHSHL North Central, the IHSHL West, and the Chicago Catholic League, where two SHL teams play in. So, well, two former, one current, one former, should I say. But anyway, in the IHSHL North Central, it looks about just the same when you look at all the teams: Notre Dame, Chicago North, New Trier Blue, Highland Park, D155, Ice Cats, LZMW, Deerfield, Evanston, BGHW, Prep, and Rockford. Two things to note: Yeti is fairly new champions, and brand new are the Rockford Lightning, who did start off 0-1. They lost that game 5-2 to New Trier Blue, but at the top of the leaderboard, the only teams that remain unbeaten at the moment. 2-0 Notre Dame leads the league as of right now. Chicago North started their season 1-0, winning 2-0, and then New Trier Blue with that 5-2 win, as we mentioned. As we go over to the Chicago Catholic League, 8 teams in the varsity level this year, and only one 3-0 team so far. How about St. Ignatius? They didn't get a jump on SHL play yet, but they started in CCHL, starting 3-0, outscoring their opponents 18-3 through those 3 games. Brother Rice and Fenwick are alongside the winning side so far. Bennett, Providence, St. Rita have not played yet, and Mount Carmel is 0-2, while Notre Dame, who is double rostering leagues, is 0-3. Lastly, taking us over to the Illinois West Division, it is a very similar, I believe there's been minimal mix-up, except now D230. The D230 Saints are a thing, apparently, and They have actually started their play as well. They lost their first game 9-5 to Maine, but besides that, not a lot of difference in Illinois West, whereas the leaders currently DuPage, Hinsdale Central, and Maine all at 1-0. The Warriors, Lincoln Way, and D230 all 0-1. And that's a shocking result to say the least. The defending state champions have started off on the wrong foot as they lose to the DuPage Stars. That was just yesterday on Sunday, 2-1 DuPage won. So we'll keep an eye on those three leagues as we go throughout the league, but just the one main takeaway so far, I'm very shocked that the Warriors lost their first game after that cinematic state championship last year. But you move on, new talents come in, and old talents leave. So we'll see what happens, what gets shuffled up in those three as we go on, Dylan.
All right, Luke, sounds good to me. So that'll take us into our next segment and our first week of having a guest on the podcast. It's none other than SHL President and York head coach Evan Pulakidas. We're going to try and have a guest every week from here on out. So sit back and enjoy what will be a great interview with El Presidente. And with that, there is our very first guest of the season, Evan Pulakidas, York Duke's head coach and president of the Scholastic Hockey League. Evan, great to have you on.
Hello, fellas. How are you?
Pretty good,
Doing
pretty
well?
good. So, just wanted to start off by saying, you've obviously been attached to the sport of hockey for a long time. You've coached a couple different teams in high school hockey in Illinois, and now the president of the SHL for several years as well. What is kind of your hockey background, and how did it build up to where you are now?
Wow, that's a long question. Let me just start with the SHL. So, I had a vision 14, 15 years ago that I didn't like where high school hockey was going. It was Metro North, Metro West, Metro. I just didn't think we had the top teams in the top division, and I got a group together. New Trier was playing an independent schedule. Loyola was playing an independent schedule. I brought those guys together, and then we worked on getting the top high school teams together and forming a new league. And that's really how the SHL started. And I think it was the right approach to high school hockey. And the league's just grown from there, and pretty well known. And I just want to say that you two, certainly helped the growth of high school hockey and especially the SHL. I think you guys do a really, really good job, and it's an important job for the league. So I don't want to underestimate what you also do for the league. So, we put this together and it's just grown to a different level of hockey, and I'm proud of it. I'm proud of, from the writing that goes into the SHL network, the website, the coverage, everything that we do is, I think, first class. And I'm really proud of what we've accomplished.
Yeah, sure is. And you gotta think yourself first, right? Because we wouldn't exist without you guys. So appreciate the recognition, but gotta toot your own horn sometimes too. And going on your coaching background, obviously times have changed, and as you mentioned, hockey has as well. Just from a coaching standpoint, what from your earliest years of coaching to now has changed the most? What have you had to adjust to the most in that time, trying to keep up with the new elements of the game or just preparation or such as? It's a very wide question.
No, it's a really good question because, when I first started, and it's over 30 years ago now, I think, the players were tougher, more mentally than physically. I think the physical aspect of the game is better right now. The kids are in better condition, but unfortunately, some of the dynamics of the culture has, invaded a lot of sports where you have to be aware of parents, and you have to be aware of, the type of player, if you're speaking to them, how to speak to them. And I think we've all adjusted. The older guys that are still in the business have adjusted accordingly to stay on top of it. With that said, the sport is tough, and it requires some toughness and some toughness on your skin. And there's a lot of good lessons to be learned by the game and by good coaches. And, I've certainly tempered my approach in a lot of ways. I try to get to know the players on a deeper level, and I think I've succeeded for the most part with all my players. Just, going back to last year, which was a very difficult situation to be thrown into. I'm so proud of the players I coached on that Glenbrook North team to be able to put all the noise out of the locker room and to concentrate on what we wanted to get done. And that group will always have a special place in my mind just because of how they handled some really, really tough situations that could have crumbled teams, and they wouldn't allow that to happen. So I think it'll serve them better as they go through life, relying on focus and perseverance. And, I think all the good coaches try to teach lessons. That doesn't mean during a game, if you get excited, I see a lot of the, film clips of coaches this weekend getting excited on the sidelines during college football. And, some people are appalled by that. And I just don't get it, honestly. These players are tough enough to take a few, words of criticism, and yet, when you see a coach get excited, everyone gets on the coach. Well, they have no idea, first of all, what he's saying, and secondly, maybe it's instruction, and maybe it's warranted, and maybe it's not warranted. But every time there's a coach that gets excited, people get excited. Why did he do that? You know, in my day, honestly, that was never even thought of. It was just, you played through it and you grew from it. And I think this new generation has to grow some thicker skin, truthfully.
Well, you talk about your time at Glenbrook North. You win the SHL playoffs in the championship game on the road at New Trier Green. And, obviously the SHL playoffs and state playoffs are two very different things, how they're looked at, how they work. But in terms of the SHL playoffs, what does it mean compared to a state championship? Because some would argue that the SHL playoffs are harder to win because there's a 2 out of 3 series. And just looking ahead to this year, are there any kind of format changes that we could expect, or are we going with the 1 game final, best 2 out of 3 series for this season?
Yeah, it's a really good question, Dylan. And the fact of the matter, if you were to poll the coaches, and especially in our league that has won every state championship since we formed the SHL, I think to a man, they would say the SHL championship is a harder championship to win. It's way more difficult. You can get a hot goalie in the state playoffs where you're playing under, you're playing teams that certainly don't have as much talent as you, blah, blah, blah. And, for 5 games or 4 games, you roll through and all of a sudden you're a champion. It's first of all, in the SHL, you got to make the playoffs. So that's not a given. Teams are locked out of the playoffs because they didn't make it. And then you're playing good teams all the way through. And, I have argued the point many times, and I believe it. The SHL championship is really the more difficult championship to win. The sexy championship I get is the state championship, but I think that if you win either one of those, it's certainly a banner you should be really, really proud of. Um, as far as changes this year, the only real change is the Blackhawks are not going to host the state championship, and I believe the Elite Eight and Final Four are going to be back-to-back days. For the Red Division, it's going to be at Buffalo Grove, and then on the SHL side, we'll continue with series, but we'll have a 1 game championship. And the 1 game championship I'm okay with because of the crowd that it grows and the coverage it gets, and it's one night. And I think those two teams that have advanced, they understand, the 1 game, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah, and for that Elite Eight Final Four, by Buffalo Grove, you mean West Meadows, I assume, right?
No, Twin Rinks.
Oh, Twin Rinks, really?
Twin
Okay.
Rinks. Yep, 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 yep.
Yeah, I just want to confirm on that because I know Twin Rinks is in Buffalo Grove, but
Yeah,
then BGHW, Buffalo Grove, Hersey, Wheeling plays at West Meadows, so I'm not
yeah.
sure. I was
So
off level on that one.
yeah, no. So I believe West Meadows has the combined championship, but the red division is going to be on Twin Rinks in Buffalo Grove.
Gotcha. Okay, good to know. And going on from last year now into this year, Glenbrook North, a significantly new team, obviously losing Michael Raderman. For us who have really not, I mean, Dylan's seen GBN play once. I haven't gotten to see them play in person. What can you warn us about? What still do they have that can threaten other teams in this league?
Well, I think they, I think we left behind 8 or 9 players from that championship team. So it's not devoid of talent and guys that have been through, some significant battles and wars. So I would think they'll be, pretty good. Michael Raderman is a big loss, but they have a great captain in Semmelhack, and and they have guys like Karras that should be able to do, some really good things for them. And I get asked the question a lot, how do you feel about it? You know, I, those are my kids. I would want them to do well. I would want them to do well up until they play York. So, I have no, it's not like me to hold grudges. So it's another time in my life. I wish them well. I've helped a lot of those kids even during the off season this year. So from my standpoint, people want me to be angry. People, it's not who Evan is. So it's not going to be that. And I know there's a lot of people want to go to the Glenbrook North York game and Northbrook, and I appreciate that. Look, the support I've received outside of not only Glenbrook North, but from the state of Illinois in hockey has been really, honestly, it's been overwhelming. I really can't express today my internal feelings, but I'm very grateful for the friendships I've made along the way, and hockey has represented a big part of my life. So, I'm just grateful for, I hate to say it, the love that a lot of people have shown me and sent me from other teams that, we've played against, other coaches. And um, so, look, you're always going to have detractors, and that's unfortunately part of life. York is a wonderful place to coach. I'm very happy there. The kids are very, very nice, which has been a wonderful gift to both myself and Ben Stein. And we're trying to form something great over there. And look, they're very hungry to win for sure. And can we bring that? I certainly hope so. I certainly expect to. So, the pressure to win is sincere, and hopefully we get it done.
Did I see that correctly that they were all wearing the same shirt? And is that Ben as the York Duke?
It is Ben as the York Duke, and let me tell you, when they brought that into the locker room, I could not even breathe. I
I
was
could
laughing
imagine.
so hard, and they wear, guys, they wear it every single game. They have absolutely adore Ben, and look, it's hard not to. He's really a terrific person. You get to know him, and he's all in, and he's all for the kids, and they have really. They have really taken the Ben. That shirt that's a classic for sure.
You got to put those on retail. I mean, are you
I
kidding
know,
me?
right?
I'll buy one of those.
We'll have to do that. It's really one of the mothers came up with the idea, and now every time I see the York logo, I have to look, and I'm like, is it Ben or is it really the logo?
Oh
That's
man. Well, yeah,
awesome.
Ben Stein had well, Luke and I called one of our best interviews of last season on the podcast, and he had some great things to say about you on there. But this will be my final question, just focusing on York and this new chapter of your coaching career. You know, what difference does it make when you coach a new team that you have to get to know everyone and familiarize yourself with versus a situation like this where a lot of these guys you've coached against last season or maybe the year before, and how do you kind of, use that pre-existing knowledge about them to help you coach them?
Yeah. So it's a task, right? It's look, everyone has systems, and when I first got there, the first thing I told them is everything they've learned in hockey is right. It might not be the way we do it, but I don't want to certainly denigrate whoever they've been coached from before. But it's going to be different this year, the way we coach, and our systems are different. And what's really critical is the buy-in. You could have the greatest system in the world, but if no one's buying into it, it's going to be very difficult to win. So, right now we're trying to get it where it becomes instinctive for the players to understand where they need to be, what they should be doing, what we're trying to do in certain areas of the ice. And from that standpoint, I think, we've done a pretty good job. I mean, we've played really good hockey. And, our situation right now is finding, a constant goal scorer. And look, guys, I see us in practice, and there is so much talent there and so much size and speed, and we just gotta, finish more. And you can't teach finish. So finish has to come from players. All you can do is design opportunities and, play the game the right way and do those type of things. And at the end of the day, people have to put the puck in the net.
Yeah, well said. And lastly, on my end, this will be our last question. In general, got to kind of finish with a somewhat silly one. Your favorite jersey in the SHL from last year, if you have one.
Ooh, ooh. You know, I've always loved the Glenbrook North jersey. I just think that the traditional black with the striping across the middle
Yeah, it's a
is
pretty sweet.
still the traditional jersey. And, I have to be upfront, and I designed that jersey. So
There you go.
it is my favorite, and I adore that jersey. I just think it's something that will be there. It's perpetual, and
Yeah.
will stay forever. It's traditional.
And that stripe seems to be used by so many teams now,
Right.
including Glenbrook South. I know Carmel Catholic, their
Yep.
alternate jersey from last year. So,
It's
yeah,
awesome.
you were the trendsetter, I guess you could say.
I don't know. I just been around a long time, and it's funny. Every question usually starts with, how long have you been doing this, or how long? And gosh, I'm like, I don't want to think about that aspect of it. It's been a long time, but it's been a great run, and I really have a hard time seeing my life without it. With that said, look, I know I'm in the third period of my coaching career. Maybe I'm in overtime. I don't know. It could be, but I still think I have a lot to offer and give and teach. And the day I feel like I'm letting the kids down or an organization down is the day I step away. So, that's kind of how I feel about it.
Well, I wouldn't be shocked if your coaching career went to shootout. So
Well, I appreciate
Yeah, how
that.
many rounds in that shootout, Luke? It's
All
not
right,
sudden
boys.
death like SHL is now, but Evan, one heck of a first interview of the season. Thank you so much for spending some time with us on the Scholastic Sit Down, and best of luck the rest of the way with not only the York Dukes, but running the Scholastic Hockey League.
Thank you. And really, thank you guys for everything you do for the league. Really appreciate it.
appreciate it. Thank
Very
you.
much.
All right.
Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
All right, thank you so much, Evan, for coming on the podcast with us to talk about how the league is doing. Now let's take a look at this coming week, week two of SHL play. We've got 5 games for you coming up this weekend, starting off with tomorrow for us, but tonight for you guys when you're seeing this podcast. We've got the St. Ignatius Wolfpack on the road at the Stevenson Patriots. So the Patriots already with their third game of the season, but first home game at Twin Rinks Ice Pavilion, and St. Ignatius, who lost against New Trier, will look to get 500 on the road.
Yeah, this will be an interesting game. These are two teams with a great amount of spirit experience for this early in the season, Dylan. It's September 15th as we're recording this game. St. Ignatius has already played 3 games in the CCHL. They played New Trier on Sunday, to whereas Stevenson, they're 0-2 to start, but they play today, and then as we'll talk about tomorrow, they play in 4 of the 6 first SHL season games. So they're revving it up early to a busy start. We'll see how they face off at home, 7:15 p.m. at Twin Rinks.
All right, that'll take us to our next game. The very next night, guess who? It's the Stevenson Patriots again, which in what will already have been their fourth game out of 27 regular season games, but they open the season up on the road at Glenbrook North at Northbrook Sports Center, and Glenbrook North, that'll be their first game of SHL play. So It's going to be interesting to see what they can bring to the table after a very interesting preseason invitational run.
Yeah, and I mean, we really haven't seen much of this Glenbrook North team at all, and this is my first time truly getting to look down the roster. There's a lot of young players that have returned for this team, as it is for most teams. And honestly, one of the names that really sticks out to me, obviously Jackson Bubba, but Theodore Girathanis, who had a really great breakout year at the end of last season. I think he's going to be a force to be reckoned with. I remember, I think I was doing his first, it might have been, it was either his first varsity game or his first varsity goal, or he maybe did both in the same game, but it was them against New Trier. It was an SHL game of the week. It was that game where Max Anderson, as we'll say over and over again, caught
Mhm.
that puck. It's right next to him as he did that. That was a lot of fun. But he looked really good last year. He got a whole off season to work on himself. He's feeling a whole lot more confident. I would expect him to be one of the real dark horses that power the nucleus of this offense.
Not to mention Glenbrook North, under the direction of a brand new head coach, Jeff Marks, making his varsity debut. He's a long-term second team head coach of GBN, whether that's varsity 2 or JV, whichever their second team is. But now he gets to coach the varsity squad, and obviously probably very familiar with a lot of these guys, but that'll be his debut at the SHL varsity level. Up next, Saturday, September 20th, we have one game. It's at 6:30 p.m. in Luke. This is a big one. It is a rematch of last year's SHL final. New Trier Green at home against Glenbrook North and at Winnetka Ice Arena. Why not? The exact site that GBN upset the Trevians to win the SHL trophy last year.
Yeah, what an insane game that was. Just got me thinking about it, Dylan. But I mean, New Trier, this should be your game. Then again, Glenbrook North, so unpredictable, as we once said. And the Trevians in their last game with 28 penalty minutes, you got to put a leash on that. You can't let emotions get the best of you, especially this early in the season. Every game counts the same. You got to stay level-headed if you're New Trier. You got to stay confident.
All right, well, that takes us to Sunday, where we have two games starting off at 4:10 p.m. It is the Carmel Catholic Corsairs on the road at Loyola Gold, that one at American Heartland Ice Arena. That'll be the first SHL regular season game of the season for both of those sides. And then later on at 5:15 p.m., we have Lake Forest at home looking to make another statement as they take on St. Ignatius at Alumni Memorial Fieldhouse. Luke, which of those two games sticks out to you?
Well, it's starting off on Carmel and Loyola. That's kind of a game of the unpredictables. Carmel, we saw a little bit of in the preseason invitational. Didn't look too impressive, but then again, Loyola, we don't know what we're going to see. You know, I have high beliefs and expectations in players like Peter Lochnicki, Jack Blazejowski, Charlie Trapp, but how can they round together the rest of their guys in their first SHL game and both these teams did already play in a tournament, so the levels of rust are pretty even. They're almost all knocked off, but still, first SHL game. I think you're going to see some teams still trying to gather it together, especially on the offensive end. I feel like the start of the season, you always have the most troubles with breakouts and zone entries and power play. So, whichever team can get a hold of that faster in this game will most likely be the winner. And besides that, St. Ignatius and Lake Forest, I'm just going to I'm going to skip the line here. This is my game of the week. Lake Forest, after that win against St. Viator, has really raised their expectation with that huge upset of what arguably could be the top number one or number two team in the state. It'll be interesting how they fare off against a St. Ignatius team who only lost by two to New Trier in their first SHL game. So that's another one that's pretty unpredictable, and that's one of the many reasons it's my game of the week, Dylan.
All right, well, Luke, you answered my next question, so you take that one. I'm gonna go ahead and take New Trier Green at home against Glenbrook North, and for the sole reason alone of it being a rematch of what was just a fantastic 2025 SHL final last year. There's a lot of returning players on both of these squads that, again, New Trier does go on to win state last year, but SHL is a very prestigious championship as well, and I'm sure they're going to be coming for revenge, and that's just going to be a great game, an island game on a Saturday night, 6:30 p.m. Both squads will bring out a big student section. and that should be just a really exciting game. And Luke, I'm going to go ahead and surprise you here with a new feature or segment I want to bring into this podcast that I forgot to
Intrigue
tell
me.
you about. But I think that we should have a little competition between us going all season long where we pick what we think will be the highest scoring game of the week. And
I like that.
if we get it right, we get a point. And if it's tied with another game, then we get half a point. And we see how many points we have at the end of the season. So with that, what's your pick?
Oh boy, put me on the spot here. First off, love that concept. That is something I've always watched like, pregame shows, think a college game day where they have a competition like that, or the other ones like Big Noon Kickoff. And obviously I'm relating to football, but you get the point. But man, that's got me thinking. Hmm, looking down the line here, I think you could see a lot of offense between I think I'm gonna go with St. Ignatius and Stevenson. I got a good feeling from that game as I was scrolling by it. I do think, I mean, obviously you got Asher Ali for Stevenson. You do have a new goalie here for St. Ignatius, but I just feel like I don't know. It's really based off of all feeling. It's a weekday game. I really don't know what I am expecting at all. I'm just gonna, because I've learned from the past, if I look too deep into something, most times I'm not right. So sometimes you just have to flat out guess. And I'm sure I'm going to become more researched as the time goes on. But I'm gonna go with St. Ignatius and Stevenson, Dylan. I don't know. I just feel like it could be like 7, 8 goals out of that game.
All right, Luke. Well, I'm going to go ahead and take St. Ignatius and Lake Forest on that Sunday. I think we saw that
It's a
first
good
Lake
one.
Forest game 4-3. Clearly Lake Forest only 17 shots in that game, but they were able to score some goals. So I think we're going to see that as the highest scoring game. And let me just also add this one rule. If you haven't caught on already, Luke and I trade off every episode of who's the host and who's, the not host, the guest, but you know what I'm saying. But
Exactly.
I think how we should format this is whoever's the host, the other person gets first pick, and then the host
Gotcha.
has to pick a different game.
Okay. I like
So,
this.
all right, well, let's see
You know
who.
what? With some of the guests, we got to get their picks too. Maybe
Oh.
I don't know if we should pick Evan, but like if we ever have like a completely neutral guest that isn't a coach or player, I think
Yeah.
it'd be a fun idea.
They get Paul Zarang in on the Benny's Beverage Depot attendance, so
Exactly.
why
There you
not?
go. There
All
you
right,
go.
so that does it for our next week preview, and that'll take us into our final segment. All right, so to wrap things up, we've got question of the week and trivia. And before we get into this, I just want to say I think we made a pretty good point about how we wanted you guys to comment on last week's episode. And yes, we got one comment, which we'll get to in a second, but we didn't get any answers to the question of the week or trivia. So Luke and I are both very disappointed in all of you, and we'd love it and really appreciate it if you left your comments down below your answers to the question of the week and trivia.
You guys are gonna make me rip the remaining hairs off my head. I need some sort of interaction down here in the comment section. I'm driving myself insane.
Well, we do have Rob M674, pardon me, 6847.
Oh, I thought it.
What?
Caught me on the 6-7 part.
Oh, oh yeah, okay.
God. Can you
Well,
tell I coached a
anyway,
bunch of kids this summer?
I'm sure all the players who listen to this podcast will appreciate that one. But Rob M
I
says
hope.
Vider is going to run the league, and Luke, that seems to be a similar opinion you share with Rob M.
Yeah, me and Rob M nearly 6-7, 6-8. I still stand on it. I know that loss to Lake Forest looked bad, and I know we didn't get to watch the game film, anything like that. You look at the shots on goal, though. If you're out shooting your opponents 33-17 every single game, I'm sure your record's going to be pretty good. So I don't think it's a time to panic for St. Viator. I think it's a time to keep your confidence, but also that game is a reality check, and we talk about it every year, whether on the podcast or even in prior years when we didn't run this. You need speed bumps in your season. That's that's what New Trier got in that SHL final against GBN. They got that reality check. Wait a second. We played like we're the best team in the state. Now let's go do it. And that's how they won the state championship. So I don't think it's time to hit the panic button for St. Viator, and well said by Rob. Short and sweet, right?
Yeah, that's it. So, as for our question of the week and trivia, let's start with question of the week. Would you rather start your season off earlier in the schedule or later in the schedule? And let me explain what I mean by this. With the SHL, early season scheduling is all over the place. So, if you're a team or a player, would you rather be playing a team that's also kicking their season off? Or maybe play a team, get a little extra rest, and play a team that could be 2 to 3 games into their schedule, and why?
And I almost kind of want to take a different avenue on this answer, Dylan Torres. I think of all the teams last year in the late season who were struggling with fatigue. I think as unfortunate as it is, I think St. Ignatius was kind of an example of that. Torres, you're playing in two leagues, you're entering the home stretch. You got league playoffs for both. You got state playoffs. It adds up over time, and as non-correlated as it sounds, I think it is so important to get a jump on your games early. And let's get one thing straight. If teams wanted to play on September 15th, I know most of them play at pretty public arenas and it's hard to get ice, but if they really wanted, they could play this early. I don't think and please, if you're, go in the comment section and prove me wrong if I'm wrong, but I think that these teams are scheduling strategically and there's a differing value. This is why it's a good question because there's teams that want to start early and there's teams that want to, stick to the conditioning, wait to start games until they feel they're completely ready to go for games. But every game counts the same, and you want to get them out of the way now before you're on the home stretch of the playoffs and you're playing what? 3, 4 games a week because we've had scenarios where teams have had to cancel games they go on late in the season. You don't want that to add on. So personally, and I completely respect anybody who schedules their games late, but just for our sake as well, we need those games early.
Yeah, that's a good point, Luke. And I'll, make it known that in the Scholastic Hockey League, the scheduling is done by the teams themselves. So all the coaches will pick out their X amount of home games and put them on the calendar, and then they schedule around that. So it's a really good point you make, Luke. If you're GBS and you don't want to start the SHL season until October 3rd, you don't have to while all these other teams are getting going. And I'm going to go ahead and agree with you. I think that if the season's starting this early, you might as well play in it. A, because you want to be on the same pace as your opponent when you play them. So, for a team that starts late, they might be playing a team that's already gotten 4 or 5 games, who knows, of SHL play underway. And in high school hockey, especially where there's so many first year varsity players, I'm sure they get the jitters a little bit in their first ever SHL league game. So to play a team that's already kind of in that rhythm could be a disadvantage. But yeah, I mean, you're totally right about the scheduling congestion down the late season. I mean, you take a look at Stevenson, they're gonna have 4 games played before a lot of teams have 2 games played. And that's, I mean,
Before some even have one, I believe, right? I
yeah,
mean,
yeah. Before GBS has one, GBS will be the only team left after this week. But I mean, still, 27 game regular season to get 4 out of the way like that, that does make a difference in the long haul and fatigue wise. That's a really good point.
yeah, and I know it's hard to avoid, but I think also you got to try to avoid back-to-backs as much as you can because you don't think they take a toll, but they definitely can. And Stevenson having to play this week, Tuesday and Wednesday, that third period on Wednesday is going to be tough. You're talking about a 24-hour turnaround. It's not easy. And just personally, in my playing experience, obviously, as my team was never as close to good as these teams, but just having that sixth period stamina in 24 hours is never easy for anybody. So not only do you want to get a jump on it now, but you don't want to cluster it. Have 4 now. Oh, let's wait a few weeks. Let's play 4 in the first week of October for the heck of it. Like you want to make sure it's spread out evenly as well. Just kind of a random tack to add on to it.
Yeah, and it's with as many tournaments as there are in high school hockey, that's when your back-to-back should be,
Yeah.
right? That when you play an SHL regular season, it's supposed to kind of feel like it's an island. It's not one of those tournaments. So when you do play back-to-back nights, You kind of get that tournament style fatigue. That's a really interesting point you make, Luke.
Yeah, and lastly, the only time that people don't complain about back-to-backs are tournaments because look at your competition. You're playing a back-to-back, you're playing two on Saturday, they're playing two on Saturday, to whereas sometimes in the SHL season, you're playing Tuesday, you're playing Wednesday. Meanwhile, some other team has a whole week off and they get to study you and study your film for a week and prepare for you for a week, prepare for your power play. All that, all those little things can really make a long run. So,
All right, and that'll take us to our trivia question. And last week's trivia question was how many returning players does Loyola Gold have? Luke, that was asked by you. Would you like to reveal the answer?
yeah, it's a pretty big number. It's a baker's dozen with 13 returners. And talk about how Nutria returned a lot. Loyola returns a lot as well. That's a big number to watch out for throughout this season. 13 returners.
Luke, that is a big number, and Loyola had goals of reaching the United Center for the first time in quite a few seasons, but lost to Bennett in the semifinals. With that many returners, we will see what they can do. This week's trivia question, and obviously no one got it right because no one even guessed. So make sure you get your answer down in the comment section. This is going to be an interesting one. You have to listen to how I phrase this carefully. Who scored the first goal of the SHL season this year in the first game? Notice how I did not say varsity. There are three divisions in the Scholastic Hockey League. I'll leave it at that, and you can figure out the rest. But the question is, who scored the first goal in the Scholastic Hockey League at any level this season? And that'll do it
Creative.
for our podcast. Go ahead, Luke.
No, I was just saying creative. I like it.
Oh,
Good
I
question.
appreciate it. I appreciate it. So you can figure that out. Leave your guess down below. And that'll do it for episode number 2. Luke, it's been great to spend these last 3 weeks with you, but even better this week to actually talk about some final scores in the Scholastic Hockey League.
Yeah, not only that, get to talk to a real human other than us as well between Evan Pulakidas. Want to thank him for coming out and look forward to the many other guests we'll be having this season as well.
All right, sounds good. Thanks for spending your Tuesday with us. Enjoy the week of hockey, and we'll see you right back here next week for episode number 3.